At the end of the last video, we had completed the foundation and the floor framing for this little simple house. And I want to take a few moments to go back through kind of what we did and the components that we built. First, we built the foundation, which included here, we can see the footing, the stem wall in this section, and then isolated footings for each of the piers. All those are considered part of the uh, foundation. And then here we can see the beams that we ran the length of the building, and then a sill plate here, which we use to attach then a series of joists at 16 inches on center. And then we ended those joists with what we call a rim joist, which terminates or caps the joist. And then we placed on top of that a plywood decking, 3/4 inch plywood decking. If we look at that from a variety of different images, probably let's look at it from a 3D image first. We'll see it looks something like this. Of course, right now we've got it covered in the plywood, so we can't see the footings. I mean, see everything underneath it, not only the footings, but also we can't see the joist. If I click on it, of course, it makes it temporarily transparent. We can see all those things there. If I go in and hide that view, if I needed to be able to see it, I could hide that, and then I would have access to it. I just got to remember to turn it back on. So there's our members right there. There's our joist. Uh, and then between those, of course, are our beams that are reducing the length of the joist by coming in here and making them so that they won't bend as much. And then, of course, the end board right here is the rim joist, and the sill plate is, of course, that element right there. So now we've got this floor completed, and we're going to move on to the walls and the roof. But one more thing I want to comment about this floor in BIM, normally we would not, as far as wood construction, we would not build it like this. I wanted you to go through the process and show you how you could actually build each one of the components and structural components. Normally we would place this in as a system, and when we get into the walls and the roof, that's what we're going to do. We're going to set this in as a part of the system. Um, so I'm going to open up another file that I added some elements to explain to you what we're going to do next. In this new file, you'll notice two elements that I put in here, or two sub-assemblies that I put in here. One is the assembly of the wood frame wall, and I'm going to reference that as we put in the wall itself. And the other is right here is of the rafters uh, of the roof and some of the support structure that might go in as we build that roof and make it. Um, so let's look at walls first. In BIM, normally in wood frame or steel frame using lightweight light metal steel, you would not build each one of the components as we've seen here. I've done that and had you do that on the floor to give you an idea of how these assemblies go together, these assemblies of these components go together. But in this wall, all we're going to do is do it in the roof. We're just going to do it as you would do it in BIM. And that is place it in as a system. And so let's go into architecture here, and we're going to go into walls. And walls, in this case, this is going to be a structural wall, so we're going to say structural. And you'll see a whole list of walls that are given. Okay. And what I want you to do, the first thing I'm going to want you to do is to create your wall that you're going to use, that you're going to build here, and the layers that are in it. Right here, I've created an exterior wood frame wall, which is what we're going to use, what we're going to build now. But let's go and what we're going to do is we're going to take an existing wall that they've done here. Let's say an exterior wall with brick on wood frame. Okay. I'm going to open that up and then I'm going to edit the type. And when I do, of course, the type properties box is going to appear. Okay, and then I'll turn on a preview so that we can see the different layers that are built into. Okay, so this is the section view of our wall, the assembly of our wall, and the other was a plan view looking down on this, the cut through. But I think this is an easier one to understand, is this here. And so we've got several components here. If we go to edit structure here, we'll see all those different members. Okay, first of all, I've selected brick common. You can see the brick common brick there. Then there's an airspace in here, and then area infiltration membrane. It's so thin that it really doesn't even show up. As you can see, it's set it even as 0. This is not a structural component, but is a representation of a layer for calculations. But anyway, it's not important at this point. The substrate, you'll notice there's a plywood sheeting on the outside of this, okay? And then if we look, we'll see that then there's the structure, which would be, in this case, this is a 5.5 inch 2x6 wall. And so there's a 5.5 inch member here, okay? Um, everything but the structural and the substrate here, the plywood sheeting and the lumber, the dimensional lumber that's being used for structure, everything besides those two things are in what we would call the enclosure or envelope system. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back here. We'll say OK to this, and we'll go back to this previous dialog box, and I'm going to duplicate this wall. And it's still an exterior, but we're just going to call it a wood frame wall. And I'm going to width 3/4 inch plywood. Okay. So we're going to sheathe it in 3/4 inch plywood and just show the structural framing of this wall in this case. In the previous, in the next assignments, we will come in, and when we get into enclosure systems, we'll put an enclosure system, the brick and whatever we want on the outside of this. But anyway, let's go back to edit. And so we're going to delete some of these things. I'm going to select here and delete that, so that we're down to the structure and the substrate, and then there is a membrane layer on the inside, a vapor retardant. We're going to delete that, and then the gypsum board that would be on the inside for a finish. And once again, that's an interior finish. So we're down now to just 2 layers. We've got the plywood here and the structural wood here. Okay. So with that in mind, we're going to say OK. And now we have our frame wall, and we're ready to do it. So we're going to place our frame wall here. Okay. And to do that, we're just going to go into architecture. We're going to go into walls, wall structural, and we have our wood frame with plywood that we just created. We're going to select that. Okay, and then we need to do some settings up here as to tell it where we want it located. First of all, we want the bottom, the base, right? The base of this wall to sit on the first floor. And then we want to go up to another level that we've created. So I'm going to go into my wall section G real quick. And I'm going to, notice I expanded it. Your wall section may be something like this. Okay. What I did is I went ahead and pulled this out and made it more like a wall section. I pulled it out extensively. Oh, we want to go into actually 5. Okay. We'll need G later too, but let's go into 5. Okay, because this is where our wall is. Okay. So if we go back to say the finished floor or the 3D here, we'll see our section is cut right across here, right? In the finished floor, we can see our section cut right here, and it's also cutting through this little wall that I built, this little piece of the wall that I built. So let's go back to 5 here. So what we want to do is place this wall on top of the finished floor that we just built, and we want it to go to the top plate, the top of the plate. And so from the finished floor to the top of the plate, top wall plate, okay, level. And I've set this for 9 feet. The convention for most small houses like this is 8 feet, an 8-foot wall. But a lot of that is changing. A lot of people are adding it, found out there's not that much cost in it. Um, and it can make a more visually, spatially comfortable environment to be in if it's a 9-foot ceiling. So a lot of people now are doing 9-foot ceilings, but not it's not the conventional. But we're going to do 9-foot ceilings. So I'm going to go in here to the first floor, and if we look at the first floor uh, layer, we can see there's our plywood. I just selected that. That's our decking that we put down that's covering up all of our structure there. And basically, we want a wall on the perimeter of this right here. Uh, and so once again, we'll go back now into wall structural, and select that. Select this plywood that we created. And now we want to do it by height, not depth. Okay. And it's going to give me an error statement because it can't build it based on that. And then our base constraint is going to be on first floor. And then the top constraint, okay, we're going to go up to our top of wall plate. Okay, so it's going to be, as you can see, it's going to be 9 feet, okay, from first to up to top of wall plate. Um, and so the height, we're going to go up to the top of wall plate. And then location line, okay, how are we going to build the wall? Well, the core face, that's the 2x. We want it to sit on the edge of the plywood here, and I'll show you why that in just a few minutes. So we're going to go core face, exterior of the core face, and I'm going to select here, and you'll see my wall. It's on the wrong side. So what I'm going to do is hit the tab bar and flip it over to the other side. And then I'm going to go here and here. Oops, I didn't go far enough. I'll just go ahead and end that. And let's go back into my wall here. And this is a good example. I'll show you how to fix that just so that, okay, and then when I close here, of course, it's going to weld the walls together as one piece. Notice that it also went ahead and that other wall was close enough to this one that it made the assumption that we wanted those welded together. So now we've got those exterior walls. If we go back into our 3D view, we're going to see we have a series of exterior walls. That separate components are not in these walls. Okay, in other words, there would be separate components of 2x6s in a 2x6 wall here, but it's not primarily because you don't model the system. We'll show that eventually in the wall section. So when we go to finish the wall section here, we see the plywood and we see the exterior wall right there, okay, the stud, and then we'll notice the plywood hangs over just a little bit. And the reason is because we want this plywood to come down and tie this to the so when we put on the sheathing, we would actually have it overlap here so that we use the sheathing to tie the wall to the wood floor framing. Okay, and then of course, if in a wall section, we would see these two top plates right here and here, and then the bottom plate right here. And when we get into the wall section, annotating it, we will add those elements to it. So that's how really simple it is to put the wall in. The next thing we're going to do is put on the roof.